For 7 clandestine years, I had woven my life around Benjamin Scott, the CEO who held my heart in secret. When he finally promised me forever, the world seemed to brighten, until it didn't. Just a week before our wedding, he took to social media to unveil a new love, flaunting another woman beneath the glaring eyes of the digital world. Notifications flooded in, friends, acquaintances, strangers, all tagging me with hollow congratulations. Then, his reply. A cold clarification: don't get it wrong. She's my girlfriend. The silence that followed was deafening. I typed out a gracious wish for his happiness, my fingers steady while my world quietly crumbled. But what they didn't see was my own quiet rebellion. That same day, I slipped away and sealed my future with Ethan Carter, the childhood friend whose wealth and warmth had always been a silent constant. This time, the ending was mine to write. 7 days later, at what should have been our pre-wedding dinner, Benjamin strode in late, a riotous Disney backpack slung over his shoulder, and a child's headband perched absurdly on his head. Minutes before, I'd assured investors of his professionalism, his dedication. Now, he looked every bit the man returning from a theme park escapade. To save face, I reached for the decanter. The liquor burned like liquid fire, searing through the fragile lining of my stomach. Sweat beaded on my skin as I fought to keep my composure. Across the table, Benjamin tended to a little girl, spooning food into her bowl with a focus that excluded everyone, especially me. By the time the meal staggered on, I was drowning in the heat of the alcohol, choking down both the drink and the humiliation. I tried to reach for Benjamin's arm to ask him to help me refuse another toast, but just then, he picked up his glass and addressed the entire room, saying, "Let me introduce someone. This is my girlfriend, Claire Bennett. If any of you have future projects, don't forget about our Claire." At that moment, I sat there like a fool, watching him with cold eyes as he shamelessly uttered those absurd words. We had known each other for 3 years and been in a relationship for 7. I couldn't even count how many times I had asked him to make our relationship public, but he always rejected me, saying the company was preparing to go public and couldn't afford distractions. No. After all this time, when he had finally promised to marry me, he blatantly brought another woman to the forefront and made their relationship public in front of everyone. I stood there frozen. I didn't know what to say or what to do. I just kept staring at the shirt he was wearing, embroidered with the initials of our names. It looked especially painful now. I had so many things I wanted to say that the words just wouldn't come out. By the time the dinner ended, I hadn't said a single word. As I followed Benjamin and the others out of the hotel, I clutched my aching, numb stomach, took out my phone and posted, looking for a new groom. First come, first served. Ethan Carter, the childhood friend from a prestigious family in Washington, replied almost instantly, "See you at the registry tomorrow." Looking at that reply, I chuckled. Benjamin was still holding Clary as they stood at the hotel entrance. When he noticed I hadn't followed, he turned to me and asked, "What are you looking at?" I quickly locked my phone and replied casually, "Nothing. You and Miss Bennett go ahead first. I have something to take care of." He froze for a moment, seemingly not expecting that response from me. Over the years, Benjamin had many female companions he claimed were just for social appearances. He always told me to be understanding and promised he would marry me to give me peace of mind, and every time, I would cry and cause a scene. But this time, when he made Claire public in front of clients, I didn't react at all. It didn't take long for him to go back to being his usual cold self. "Be careful on your way home," he said. "Go check out the wedding dress yourself. Just use my card." So he did remember that today was supposed to be the day we picked out our wedding outfits. He did know that the woman he was supposed to marry in 7 days was me, and yet he still got into the car with Claire, leaving me alone in the chilly night breeze. I took off the engagement ring I had worn for 7 years and tossed it into the trash can. Benjamin didn't come home until 2 days late. Now only 5 days remained before the wedding. 2 days ago, right after he left, I really did go to the civil affairs office with Ethan Carter and got the marriage certificate I had been dreaming of for the past 7 years. It was only when I held it in my hands that I realized marrying someone could be so easy, as long as that person truly wanted to marry you. Snapping back to the present, I finished packing the last of my luggage. Just then, Benjamin, who had just changed into slippers, spotted the large suitcase in the corner. His expression darkened. "Grace Miller, you think you're somebody now, just a little thing like this, and you're running away from home." In his eyes, announcing his relationship with another woman just days before our wedding was nothing more than a trivial matter. Or maybe in his eyes, no matter what he did, I wasn't supposed to leave him. I gave a small smile and calmly replied, "No, you're overthinking it. I'm just packing up some clothes I don't need so my parents can take them back when they come for the wedding." But even after I said that, he didn't believe me. His voice softened a little. "You have that many clothes you don't want?" I explained that there were also some souvenirs I'd bought over the years. I planned to ask my parents to take those home, too, so they wouldn't clutter the place. Over the years, we had traveled to many places, always as part of his business trip since Benjamin said our relationship couldn't be made public. Every time we arrived in a new city, I would buy a local souvenir as a token of us being there together, as if it were the only proof that our relationship ever existed for 7 years. I treasured those items with great care. That was until last week when he came home with a scent on him that didn't belong to me. I happened to be gently cleaning those souvenirs at the time. Suddenly, he burst out in anger, shouting, "Just throw out all this junk already." I looked at him with a wounded heart and couldn't bring myself to let go of them. We ended up having a huge argument now. Seeing that I had finally come to my senses, Benjamin put on a different expression with a guilty tone. He said, "I'm sorry, Grace. I was just a little worked up. I was afraid you'd be upset about me and Claire, and decide to leave. Honestly, what I said at the dinner that day was just part of a game of truth or dare. Don't take it seriously. I can have him clarify it for you if you want." His excuse was pathetic, just like all the ones he'd used over the years. "But now I finally realized something, I replied firmly with a decisiveness that caught him completely off guard. Seeing how indifferent I was, he stared at me for a couple of seconds before saying, "Grace, I've always known you understand me best." His fake words and smile made me sick. I didn't want to say anything more, but before I could step away, he suddenly pulled me into an affectionate hug. Gazing at the photo of us on the wall, he said dreamily, "Grace, after 7 years, I'm finally marrying you. I am really happy, aren't you?" This was the first time in 7 years he had said anything about marrying me, and he claimed he was happy. Every time I brought up marriage in the past, it would always turn into an endless argument. At first, he'd say, "I'm still focused on my career, marriage and a family would hold me back. Can't you just be understanding?" Later, when things got better, he changed his tune. "Marriage is just a formality. Are you really that shallow that you care about such things?" Even the day he finally agreed to marry me, it was only because I kept begging him and he reluctantly gave in. "I don't like weddings," he had grumbled. "Let's just not have one, just register and be done with it." In the end, I pleaded with him over and over again before he finally agreed to a simple wedding ceremony. But the wedding was so bare bones and he didn't participate in a single part of it. It became clear that no matter how much time passed, the person he wanted to publicly acknowledge and marry had never been me. Lowered my head and smiled faintly as I slipped my fingers from his hand. "The custom wedding dress just arrived. Do you want to see it?" I looked into his eyes, testing his reaction. He was about to nod, a rare flicker of anticipation in his gaze, but then his phone rang, interrupting the moment. It was Claire Bennett's personalized ringtone. He immediately raised his phone and turned to leave, only when he caught a glimpse of me from the corner of his eye did a trace of guilt flicker across his face. "Grace, you'll see the dress on the day of the wedding. There's no rush. Something came up. I have to take care of it. You can have dinner on your own tonight." Before I could say a word, he had already turned and walked away without looking back. Watching his hurried figure disappear, I suddenly remembered the first time he met me 7 years ago. He had been just as eager and determined back then. It was a chilly spring day. He had just finished a business meeting but got stuck in heavy traffic to make it on time for our date. He jumped out of the taxi and rode a bicycle for over an hour just to see me. His youthful cheeks were flushed red and he held my favorite cake in his hands without a single dent. "Grace Miller, will you be my girlfriend? I don't have much money right now, but I'll treat you well for the rest of my life. I'll never forget the careful, earnest look on his face as he handed me that cake. Back then, I just never imagined that his idea of the rest of his life would only last 7 years. And Benjamin Scott, you'll never get to see me in a wedding dress again. After Benjamin left, I slept soundly through the night and didn't wake until noon the next day. The moment I turned on my phone, I saw that my uncle had sent me a screenshot. Benjamin's name was trending as the #1 topic. Tech industry rising star Benjamin Scott's mysterious fiancé revealed, rumored to be popular starlet Claire Bennett. 7 years. For 7 years, I had gone to ridiculous length to keep our relationship a secret. I had climbed walls, crawled through service tunnels, even disguised myself as a pregnant woman. Every time Benjamin would laugh at how absurd I looked. Now he could finally be with someone else openly and proudly. I suppose I should congratulate him. I closed my phone and headed downstairs to cook something simple for myself, but before I could even start, the villa door opened. Benjamin returned in a rush, and when he saw me standing in the kitchen, his face lit up with delight. He placed a container of my favorite school day snack, mini wontons, on the counter. "I brought lunch for you. Eat up," he said. I hadn't expected him to come back at this hour, let alone bring me lunch. I tried to force a polite smile, but the moment I took the bowl from him, I froze. The wontons were covered in chopped scallions, but I never eat scallions. Then I remembered how Benjamin had carefully picked out scallions from Claire's plate the other day. As I stood there holding the cold bowl of wontons, I realized instantly this was what Claire didn't want. Without a second thought, I tossed the whole bowl into the trash. Benjamin followed behind me, his voice rising in anger. "Grace, what the hell are you doing?" I brought that for you out of kindness. They're cold, I replied calmly, and my stomach can't handle it. He was stunned for a moment, rubbing his nose awkwardly. He muttered, sorry, Grace, there was traffic. It got cold on the way home. I'll order you some takeout, okay? Faced with this sudden attempt to please me, I grew even more suspicious that something else was going on. He looked at him directly and said, if you have something to say, just say it. The look in his eyes told me he thought I was the most obedient woman he had ever had. He exhaled in relief and finally confessed, it's just the wedding might have to be postponed. I didn't respond immediately, and surprisingly, Benjamin wasn't upset for once. He actually sat beside me and spoke gently, trying to explain, I know we've been together for 7 years and you must be really looking forward to this wedding, but I've got a major project right now and I need Claire's father's support. I have to keep him happy. If we go through with the wedding now, the media will blow it up and the whole deal could fall through. I assent. The way things are now already pretty good. What I have given you, most people never get in a lifetime. As he spoke, he reached for my wrist, trying to find the pink diamond ring he had once given me, but my hand was empty. Benjamin, frozen, shock. His lips parted, then closed again, as if wanting to ask something. I pulled my hand back and answered casually, all right, let's go with your plan. After saying that, I stood and headed upstairs to rest. Just as I reached the second floor, Benjamin suddenly ran after me and called out, Grace, once I wrap this up, let's go to the Maldives and have the wedding there, just the two of us. Did you always want to go? His words were more sincere this time, a stark contrast to his earlier empty appeasement. I paused for a moment, then replied without much thought, sure. His tense face finally relaxed into a smile. He waved at me, then go get some rest. I've got something to take care of. I'll be heading out. And just like that, he was leaving again. I knew he was going to see Claire Bennett again, but this time I wouldn't stop him because there were only 3 days left before I would leave him for good. The next morning, I carried the souvenirs I had cherished for 7 years and got ready to throw them away. I had lied to Benjamin Scott that day. I never planned to take those things with me. We were parting ways. What was the point of holding on to these mementos? But just before I reached the trash bin, a woman suddenly stepped into my path. I looked up and instantly recognized her. It was Claire. The marks from last night's intimacy were still visible on her neck, bold and unhidden, a blatant act of provocation. I felt a wave of mockery inside, but had no intention of engaging with her. I moved past her to leave, but she suddenly called out, Grace Miller, Benjamin will never marry you. She stood there like a victor, proudly flaunting her conquest. I paused, turned around and asked flatly, so what are you trying to say? Me indifference to her probably seemed like just another way of licking my wound. She handed me a medical slip and simply said, I'm already pregnant with Benjamin's child. He'll never marry you. Her words made my grip on the suitcase falter. With a loud crash, it fell into the trash bin. He stared at the souvenir, snow mixed with garbage and filth. Hand realized that even the last shred of dignity between Benjamin and me had completely vanished. So this was the real reason behind postponing the wedding. They already had a child during the 7 years I was with Benjamin, because we had to keep our relationship hidden. I had aborted 3 pregnancies. He always said he would make it up to me. Was this his idea of compensation? I didn't want to say another word. I simply replied, don't worry, I'll step aside for you two. With that, I walked away and called Ethan. Carter, move the wedding up, come this afternoon, and take all my luggage. Ethan responded quickly. That night at 10 p.m., for reasons unknown, Benjamin, who hadn't come home for several days, suddenly returned. When he saw me in the kitchen cooking, he looked relieved. I checked the security footage this afternoon. There was a car I didn't recognize parked outside. Was that your friend? He asked as he walked in, not even bothering to take off his shoes. I looked at his anxious expression and calmly said, yeah, a friend. They were just in the area and happened to help me move my things. Only then did Benjamin relax. Why trouble your friend with that? I could have just sent someone to take your parents back myself. I stared at the dumplings boiling in the pot and said flatly, no need, I'll go back with them tomorrow. Benjamin's voice suddenly grew tense. Why are you going back? I thought your parents were just coming to take away some clothes. You don't need. His voice rose sharply as he grabbed my hand, nearly burning himself on the steam coming from the pot. I didn't know if it was my calm attitude over the past few days that made him suspicious, or if his instincts were finally kicking in. Either way, I found his interrogation laughable. The wedding's been postponed, so I figured I'd go home with my parents for a while, I said, as I scooped the cooked dumplings into a plate. Want some? Judging by the look on his face, I doubted he could eat anything. Benjamin followed me to the dining table, his brows still furrowed tightly. Did Claire say something to you today? It was rare to hear him say her full name. I pretended not to know what he was talking about. Asked back, who, when did she come? Hearing my response, Benjamin finally let out a breath of relief. He gently placed his hand on my shoulder and said, Grace, let me drive you tomorrow. I'll stop by the office first to wrap things up and Then come pick you up. It's been 7 years we've been together all this time and I've never met your parents. It's about time. Yes, he had never met my parents because he was always afraid their modest background would tarnish his image as a rising tech elite. I responded with a vague okay, neither agreeing nor refusing. That night, surprisingly, Benjamin stayed home and didn't go out the next morning. He left for the office, but not before making me breakfast. I watched as the food and the note he left went straight into the trash. Ethan's car arrived at the villa right on time. I turned back for one last glance at this house, where I had lived for 7 years, a house built on a lie. I got into Ethan's car, but before I could even settle into my seat, a black Bentley came speeding toward us from a short distance away, stopping right in front of us. Benjamin Scott stepped out, so shaken that he could barely stand. Staring at the scene before him, he shouted, "My name, Grace. If Benjamin wasn't gonna marry me, then of course someone else would. 7 years. I've had enough. In those 7 years, he was either too busy with work to even be seen or constantly showing up with other women by his side. In the beginning, he'd at least bothered to explain it was for investment, for business, for appearances. In Benjamin's world, there were always 1,000 reasons, but now couldn't even be bothered with that part anymore. What good would it do if he kept asking me what Claire said to me? If I told him, would he break up with her? They already have a child together. Why would he care about how I feel? What I used to want most was to stand proudly by his side as his rightful partner for that dream. No matter how many awful things he did to me, I swallowed my pride and endured it all. I never minded and never regretted it. But after Claire came to me and said those things, I began to wonder if she had acted on Benjamin's orders, or at least with his permission. Maybe all her taunts and arrogance had his silent approval. But now I didn't care enough to figure it out. If it wasn't Claire, there would have been someone else. She wasn't the first, and she certainly wouldn't be the last. The stories of all the women around Benjamin would never end. Even now, as he tried so hard to stop me, it was only because he needed someone to keep the others at bay when things got complicated. Maybe he wasn't tired yet, but I was exhausted. His name used to be the sweetest melody in my life. Now, it was the deepest scar in my heart. He stood in front of me like a man desperate not to lose something. I didn't know if he was putting on another performance or just going mad. Hadn't I already been obedient enough to step aside just like he wanted, giving him and Claire all the space they needed? I didn't want to see his face again. Every time I saw him, I'd be reminded of what Claire said to me. Even if I hadn't caught them in bed, my imagination was enough. Just thinking about what he might have done behind my back about Claire being pregnant made me sick, and now all I wanted to do was leave. I turned my head away and whispered to Ethan, "Drive." As the car started, I had barely blinked before I heard Ethan suddenly yell, "What the hell are you doing?" I looked up and saw the fury on Ethan's face, dark, intense, unlike his usual calm demeanor. He rarely got angry. I was just about to ask what was going on when I turned my head and saw Benjamin standing directly in front of our car. If Ethan had been a worse driver, Benjamin might have been dead by now. I didn't know what he was trying to do. I could only glare at him through the windshield, refusing to back down. "Let's go." "Ignore him," I said. Ethan tried to turn the wheel and get us out of there, but I stopped him. "Let me get out." My voice trembled. Tears welled up in my eyes. I knew I had to face this moment alone. Ethan got out with me anyway. The second he saw Benjamin, his expression turned icy, ready to confront him for all the harm he had caused me. But I stopped him. I didn't want any more anger or violence. I told him to wait in the car. He clearly didn't trust Benjamin, especially with how emotional he looked. But seeing how firm I was, Ethan reluctantly turned and went back into the car. I faced Benjamin alone. I looked at this man I had once loved so deeply, the man I had imagined spending my life with, and a complicated wave of emotion swept over me. How did we even end up like this? Benjamin had no idea that Claire had come to see me, but he was still desperate to make me stay. Maybe it was some gut feeling, and maybe it was the sight of Ethan that finally made him realize I was slipping away. Maybe the better word wasn't betrayal, but awakening. Yes, I had finally woken up from the dream, one that was never just about Benjamin, but about love itself. I should have felt grateful, liberated. Benjamin's eyes were filled with shock, confusion, reluctance, and a trace of guilt that was hard to spot. Before I could even say a word, he mustered the courage to ask, "Who is he?" I didn't answer him. He asked again, "If you leave, does that mean you're never coming back?" I lifted my eyes and stared directly into his with no mercy. I sneered and asked, "Do you even care whether I leave or not, whether I come back or not? Do you truly, honestly care?" Benjamin was stunned for a while, then almost like speaking to himself, he slowly nodded and said, "I do care." "And what about Claire?" I asked him directly. He had no reply. Maybe he never expected me to be so blunt. I continued, "Benjamin, do you even remember our promises, our dreams?" My voice choked as I struggled to keep my emotions under control. At my words, Benjamin lowered his head in silence. "You once said you'd give me a beautiful future," he said, that no matter what happened, you'd always stay by my side, but in the end, you're the one who broke those promises first. It's already over between us, so stop clinging to me." Every word I said was like a sharp blade cutting straight into his heart. I saw him trembling. His lips pressed tightly together. He looked like he wanted to say something, but in the end, nothing came out. "All these years, everything I've given to you, to your company, you know it better than anyone. When you were sick, I stayed by your side day and night. When your business failed, I encouraged you, supported you, and how did you repay me?" My voice kept rising. I could no longer hide how agitated I felt. I paused, fighting to suppress my emotions. Benjamin's body was trembling. His eyes were filled with pain and regret. He tried to take a step forward and reach for my hand, but I yanked it away violently. "Don't touch me," I shouted. "You don't deserve to." "Grace, no," Benjamin cried hoarsely, his voice full of desperation. "I don't agree to end it. We're not over." I turned around and climbed into Ethan's car without hesitation. I knew that in that moment my heart had died. Whatever love I had for Benjamin had been completely destroyed by his betrayal. "Grace, don't go." Benjamin suddenly lost control and lunged toward the car, trying to stop me. His voice was torn with anguish and desperation. If he had known this would happen, then why did he do what he did? Ethan looked at him with undisguised disgust. Without saying a word, he pulled a bright red marriage certificate from his coat pocket and waved it in front of Benjamin's face. Benjamin froze, staring wide-eyed in disbelief at what he was seeing. Yes, I had married Ethan Carter. Maybe it was impulsive, maybe it was revenge, but since Benjamin had entangled himself with another woman, I figured I'd return the favor with a gift of my own. I said I'd get married, and I meant it. If Benjamin wouldn't be the groom, then I'd simply find another one.
If you like my channel, please give it a thumbs up and follow. Thank you, everyone.
He believed a marriage wasn't truly complete until those words I dour spoken aloud in front of friends, family, and witnesses. So to fulfill that ideal, Ethan planned all kinds of ceremonies for us, traditional Chinese, Western, vintage, even themed ones with elements from ethnic cultures. He told me that ever since he was a child, his biggest dream had been to marry me. When he was little, he once followed his mother to visit our house. Passing by the garden, he looked up and saw me in a princess dress playing the piano. From that moment on, he was smitten. He had loved me silently ever since, but because he was afraid I didn't like him, he never dared say anything. Then he went abroad to study, and those years only delayed things further. Ethan told me that if he had known I would one day be hurt by someone like Benjamin, he would have come back earlier, even if it meant dropping out of school. Now that his dream had finally come true, he wanted the whole world to know. That's why he insisted on giving me the most extravagant wedding anyone could imagine. The next time I saw Benjamin was on a perfectly ordinary sunlit afternoon. He had fallen out with the Bennett family and his company was teetering on the edge of collapse. With no choice, he had to show up in person to meet new investors. He hadn't expected to run into me and Ethan at a hotel. Benjamin had only seen Ethan once, didn't even know his name, let alone realize that the investor he was looking for was actually my father. The unexpected reunion caught me completely off guard. I had always thought that someone as calculating as Benjamin, even if faced with someone like Ethan, would temporarily suppress high emotions for the sake of business. But the moment he saw me, he seemed to forget why he was even there. He rushed straight over to me, desperate to stop me from marrying Ethan and begging me to come back to him. "Grace," he pleaded, "I know I was wrong. Please come back. I didn't ask Claire to do those things to you. I've already cut ties with her. She's no longer pregnant. Please forgive me. There's no need to report anything between you and Miss Bennett to my wife," Ethan said coldly as he pulled me away from Benjamin. Worried that I didn't want to see Benjamin again, Ethan asked the hotel staff to escort him out. Thank God for Ethan. Every day he stayed by my side, giving me endless support and encouragement. He always said the elaborate wedding was for his own need for ceremony, but I knew deep down it was for me. He understood that only a grand, heartfelt wedding could heal the pain I carried from the past. Only such a wedding could make up for all the dark days when I was never publicly acknowledged by Benjamin. Ethan wanted me to stand beside him with dignity and pride. That's why he spent so long planning every detail, pouring his heart into it. He personally selected the wedding venue, designed the dress, and even hand-picked the music for the ceremony. For this wedding, Ethan Carter tapped into nearly all his connections and resources. He wanted the entire city to witness our happiness in the wedding day. As I walked down the red carpet in a pure white gown, holding onto Ethan's arm, heading toward our shared future, I was filled with emotion. I had finally found the man who gave me safety, who gave me peace and happiness. The venue was packed with guests and full of joy. Just when I thought everything from the past had finally become irrelevant, I saw Benjamin Scott standing quietly in a corner staring at me. His eyes were full of regret and sorrow, as if he desperately wished he could take Ethan's place at my side. but it was too late. He had already lost me completely. What I never expected was that Benjamin would actually try to crash the wedding. As I passed him in my wedding dress, he suddenly grabbed my hand and tried to run off with me. What he didn't know was that the second ribbon attached to my bouquet was tightly wrapped around Ethan's hand. "Come with me, Grace," he pleaded. "I know I'm the one you truly love. Don't marry him." Ethan walked up calmly, separating our hands. "Vice President Scott, did the car accident damage your brain? Is that why you're saying such nonsense?" "Grace is my wife. What does that have to do with you? If you came here to celebrate, take a seat. If not, there are security guards right here." But even with the guards around, Benjamin still wouldn't let go of my hand. "Did he force you to marry him?" he shouted. "You love me. I know you do. You could never love him." Never. Before he could say another word, he was forcefully taken away by the security team Ethan had arranged in advance. Our wedding went on as planned. As I looked at Ethan, I felt a kind of security I had never experienced before. Watching Benjamin being escorted out of the venue, memory suddenly flooded back. I wondered if I hadn't come from a good family, if I hadn't immediately married someone else after breaking up with Benjamin, would he still regret it the way he did now? Perhaps his love and regret only existed because things didn't go the way he expected. But life doesn't come with do-overs. If I could do it all over again, I wished I had never met Benjamin. I wished I had never fallen in love with him. I wished Ethan had been in my life from the very beginning. It had always been him. It would always be him. If that were the case, maybe I would have been even happier than I am now. Thankfully, it wasn't too late. After getting married with Ethan by my side, my heart gradually grew lighter. Eventually, Benjamin learned the truth that the investor he had been searching for all along was my father. What's laughable is that he had watched me get into that car and marry Ethan in a flash, yet never once suspected my background. He simply assumed I had found another rich man. After leaving him half a month later, Benjamin came to me again begging for help. He asked me to help him and his company for the sake of our past. But when I asked him, "What past are you talking about?" he had no answer. Between us, there was no love left, only betrayal and resentment. There had been cheating, lies and abandonment. There was nothing left to salvage. Benjamin left defeated. I hadn't seen that much pain and desperation on his face in years. He had always been so sharp and confident, always on top of things. If he hadn't been so arrogantly certain, maybe he wouldn't have dared to show up with Claire, convinced that I'd never leave him. It wasn't until the news of Benjamin's arrest that I finally understood why he had come to me that day. He really had reached a dead end because he couldn't secure new investment. His company was on the brink of collapse, and both he and Claire were now facing criminal charges for financial fraud. 3 months later, Benjamin Scott and Claire Bennett were sentenced to 10 years in prison. When I received the news, I let out a long sigh. After everything I had been through, I could finally let go of the shadows of the past and begin a new life. My relationship with Ethan grew even deeper. We had weathered storms together, supported one another, and grown side by side. I knew he was the one I could trust with my life. I was grateful that in my darkest hour, I had met Ethan Cartwright, even more grateful for the way he had always stood by me, protecting me without fail.